Hi, my name is Madison Dara, and I'm going to be an incoming senior here at Lourdes University. I am a student athlete. I am an athlete on the softball team, and I am currently studying sports management. After graduation, I hope to continue being involved in sports, whether that is becoming a college coach for softball or working with athletic programs here in the area of where I'm from. I live about 10-ish, 15 minutes away from Lourdes University, so I do commute. So I'm allowed to kind of move around here and there of where I can work, things like that. My goal for this class is that I want to expand my thinking in business ethics, but also know how important it is in business. Because understanding ethics in business can be a difference maker in decisions that you make in the industry that can benefit not only yourself as an employee, but the employer that you're working for. So, how does communication, technology, and inclusion redefine what it means well? In this episode of the podcast, Think Fast, Talk Smart by Matt Abrams, he talks with John Levin, who is a Dean of Graduate School of Business at Stanford, about the evolving ways of communication in the academic setting. During the podcast, John talks about how communication with others has changed over his career. John says that in the podcast that he centers his philosophy of communication around clarity, connection, and inspiration. John mentions that during the podcast, he talks about the issues of addressing sensitive topics in today's society and how it affects leaders and their communication. During times of uncertainty, John insists that leaders must balance clarity and openness during times of uncertainty like the recent pandemic that we had. He also mentions that it is important to get information out in a timely manner that is clear and that it includes emotional cues for how people should feel. So practicing this can not only reduce anxiety, but it remains having trust within the community. And I think we can see this a lot with on social media, different companies or businesses, whether that's food, places like Starbucks or things like that. If there's an issue or things go wrong with their product or there's something wrong that's going on that's being talked about, they most likely address this, whether it's through emails or a post on their social medias. And you can see a lot of times that they have clear communication. They talk about how you should feel, that there's no worry a lot of the times and things like that. So I definitely think that what he mentioned about times of uncertainty or there's issues going on with businesses, that's a very key point to have to make sure that there's maintained communication from business to people and things like that. So also, leaders are expected to not only inform, but they are to connect emotionally to help inspire. We can look at John's journey from going to an academic presenter to an institutional leader. He shares that communication is no longer about just clarity or persuasion, but it is about empathy. And I can totally go off of this, and what he means is because a lot of times people don't want to just listen to being told what to do, things like that. You have to not only build trust, but make them feel comfortable and things like that, to be able to not only perform their best, but to inspire them to do things that maybe not only benefit where they're working, but benefit themselves in such a way. So he shares that technology helps leaders grow and influence I have notes over here. Technology helps leaders grow their influence and reach a bigger audience. So for an example, at Stanford, they use digital tools that help empower a wider and more diverse range of future leaders, which I think is very great, is a very great way to use their technology. Effective leadership now includes technology to help connect and educate across different backgrounds. So Lastly, having inclusive leadership helps make diverse voices louder. John talks about the need for leaders to have a balance of asserting values with encouraging dialogue, especially in the social and institutional challenges. Stakeholders expect leaders to be able to publicly address issues like inequality and climate change, so this requires communication that is inclusive and being socially aware. So, where should the line be drawn between protecting profits and driving revenue and invasion of privacy in the workplace setting? It took a long time to think about this and how I think people are affected in the workplaces, no matter if it's somewhere small, like just working in food or things like that. I think there can be a lot of invasion of privacy no matter where you go. So I think that the line between protecting profits and invading privacy at work should be drawn where personal boundaries start being crossed in general. It totally makes sense that companies monitor emails to track performance, or to make sure that people are actually doing their jobs, whether if that's remote or they have cameras set up to look around. But when it gets to stuff like tracking employees' every move, reading personal messages, or using surveillance in non-work areas, I think that's where it becomes an invasion of privacy. Some levels of oversight I feel like is fair, especially if it directly affects the companies, but there needs to be clear transparency within to make sure that invasion of privacy is not happening. So if companies are collecting data or monitoring things, they should be told and what's being tracked and why. So otherwise, I think it can be seen as sneaky and it makes it hard to trust the employer. So overall, I would say that the bottom line should be drawn when monitoring stops being about the actual job performance, when it starts digging into someone's personal life. And when you start digging into someone's personal life and things like that, and it's not being used for the proper ways, even when you do establish what you're using it for, that can ultimately come back on the company of being legal and having legal actions taken against them. So, for an example, if I was a worker in the workplace that had a computer that was being monitored to make sure I worked at home, and I also had my personal email on my computer, and I was sending emails about whether it was doctor's appointments between me and a personal family member or things like that, and they can go in and talk about or see those things and they address it with you when that is personal information. That is something that they could definitely have legal actions brought on them. So I think that overall the line should be drawn when it's not being used for the correct purposes. And I think ethically that comes into play as who is monitoring it and to make sure that the proper steps are being taken to use the monitoring system, and like who's keeping each other in check. So like is there, for example, if there's 3 people monitoring it, is this person the main monitor and they can see like if they're invading the privacy and they make sure they keep each other in line. So those are my thoughts on the assignment, and I look forward to hearing other people's perspective.